So if you've been paying attention, you'll know that Russian losses in November were some of the worst for the Russians of the war. In fact, they might have been worse than in the very beginning. Jake Bro talked about this. Others have talked about this. I've talked about this. We're going to hear how the Kyiv Post explains it and what Russia's solution is going to be as they move forward. So this was a fascinating little video. It's worth sharing, and thank you to the Kyiv Post for this.
Russian soldiers are being killed and wounded at a rate unprecedented for the entire war, according to the latest statistics. The casualty rate is so high that Moscow's forces are suffering losses comparable to those of Imperial Russia during World War I.
Did you catch that? Comparable to World War I casualties. What's going on? Why is that happening? Well, they keep throwing their people into a meat grinder because people are largely expendable. This is part of the difference between the mentality between the Russians and the mentality of the Ukrainians, who are very careful not to expend their soldiers unnecessarily.
Recent comments from NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg suggest Russia has high tolerance for casualties, something Ukraine and its allies did not anticipate.
And this makes it very difficult because they have such high tolerance for casualties that they can go on longer than what you otherwise would have thought they would have been able to accomplish. So this makes the war extend. And so mentally you have to factor that in and recognize they can go further than what you thought they could initially.
Putin does have two possible solutions to the massive losses of men, and both involve Russian women. I'm Anya Kurzun, a journalist at Kyiv Post. Subscribe to our channel for regular updates, exclusive interviews, and more explainers. Statistics published this week by the British Ministry of Defense revealed that in November, Russian forces suffered a daily average of 931 casualties.
Now think about this in these terms. That's somebody's son, maybe husband, brother, right? 900 some odd in just that one day. Almost 1,000 people's lives have been just significantly hurt. Now multiply that over the course of the war, not just on the Russian side, of course on the Ukrainian side as well, but like Putin doesn't really care. It doesn't matter to him. This is just expendable. It's like, well, we eat cattle and sheep and other animals. It's as mercenary as eating beef. I mean, that's the way that he thinks about the lives of his soldiers.
The researcher Ragnar Gudmundsson, this rose over the last 7 days to a daily average of 1,020. If confirmed, the losses are already approaching historically significant levels. Most archival records place Imperial Russian military deaths during World War I at 1,100 soldiers killed and 2,200 wounded per day.
Isn't that amazing? So they're rivaling World War I, like legitimately with statistics. This is just absolutely mind-boggling that in 2023, that's the way that they're fighting. Most modern wars are very low in casualties in comparison to what it was 50 or more years ago.
According to Gudmundsson, just on November 16th this year, Russia lost 1,330 men. It should be noted, however, that Ukrainian estimates of Russian military losses include both severely wounded as well as soldiers killed. But on November 27th, the British MOD said, although Defense Intelligence cannot verify the methodology used by the Ukrainian military, taken as a total, including both killed and wounded, the figures are plausible. The last 6 weeks have likely seen some of the highest Russian casualty rates of Russia's offensive against the Donbas town of Avdiivka. And we don't have to rely on just Ukrainian sources for this.
Now, that's really interesting because why take Avdiivka? Avdiivka was a place that it appears, and I've seen this in multiple sources, that Putin really wants this so he can say he's closing the administrative borders or getting closer to the end of the administrative borders of that oblast. And so he wants a victory lap before he announces his re-election run, not because he's not going to run or not because if he runs, he's still going to win, but he wants it to look like everybody was on his side as he's winning with in air quotes.
Russians themselves are saying exactly the same thing. In a video posted on social media this week, a Russian volunteer told a church congregation about the toll being taken on Moscow's troops.
Listen to this. He says, "Hello to everyone. I am the first volunteer from St. Petersburg. My name is Vervik Igor, whatever. Right now, in Donetsk region, there is one regiment that's constantly moving forward. In fact, right now, there are heavy losses. I was absent there for 10 days. During this time, they had over 1,000 men killed."
A Russian regiment consists of 3 to 6 battalions and typically does not exceed 2,000 men, suggesting 50% were killed. The Kremlin has not officially commented on losses for months now, but there are some messages coming out of Moscow that suggest a looming demographic crisis is on Putin's mind. Speaking on Tuesday, he called on Russian women.
And there really is a looming demographic crisis. If you want to look at the crisis itself, here's Russia's population pyramid, and you'll see that about 30 years ago something happened. That was the fall of the Soviet Union, and it kind of got jacked up from there. If you want to see how it's supposed to look at how symmetrical this is in the United States as opposed to how out of balance this is in Russia. So they know that they need to do something about that.
Women to do their part in boosting the country's population. Many of our grandmothers and great-grandmothers had 7, 8, or even more children. Let us preserve and revive these excellent traditions. Large families must become the norm, a way of life for all of Russia's people.
But now you got to ask yourself why. See, like there's a lot of confusion about well, they're just being conservative. Well, not exactly. Conservatives tend to have larger families in the United States, but not because they're trying to build the demographics for the country. Like that's not on their minds at all. They just value human beings. There's a difference here, and I'll show you because you'll see it even more extreme what the difference is in just a moment.
The family is not just the foundation of the state and society, it is a spiritual phenomenon, a source of morality.
Yeah, okay, so he's using that veneer, that language, in order to achieve certain objectives that are not related to those values.
At the same time, Russia is also limiting access to abortions, a move led by the Russian Orthodox Church. Patriarch Kirill, the Kremlin-backed head of the church, said in January, the population can be increased as if by waving a magic wand. If we solve this problem and learn how to dissuade women from having abortions, statistics will go up immediately.
Okay, so that's hardly pro-life sentiment. So in the United States, you have competing values between pro-life and pro-choice. And pro-choice, the competing value is you can't tell me what not to do or what I should or shouldn't do with my body. Pro-life, the competing value is, hey, that human being has a right to life just like you do, just like I do. Okay, but nobody here in the United States is arguing, well, I'm pro-life because I want to raise the number of human beings that are within the country, or the population of the country. Nobody's arguing that. That's not it. And follow what's going on, what's being said here.
But while women from having abortions, statistics will go up immediately.
So he's pro-life, not because he's defending the life of that infant, but because he wants to increase the population so that Russia is a more mightier Russia with soldiers in a generation. And that's a very sick way of looking at this issue. But that's what's really going on here. It's not that they're just pro-life because they're pro-life like a pro-lifer in the United States. Now, I hope that makes sense because this is an important nuance to understand.
But while having more babies isn't exactly a quick fix, those in the West believe Russia can sustain the massive losses, at least for the foreseeable future. Speaking earlier this week, Stoltenberg warned that NATO must not underestimate Russia. He added, Russia's economy is in a war footing. Putin has a high tolerance for casualties, and Russian aims in Ukraine have not changed.
Let's take all of those 3 points. I'm not sure how much of a war footing it is, but they've just increased the budget, the military spending to go to 30 and actually 40% if you include all military and security in Russia just this week, adding 170,000 additional soldiers to what the quota already was just this week. And so, yeah, there's been no withdrawal of the ambitions that Putin originally had for Ukraine. So just because he hasn't gobbled up all of Ukraine doesn't mean that he wouldn't if he could. So you just have to understand the problem hasn't gone away. And when you say, well, just sit down and make peace with him, you're making peace with somebody who still wants to come and kill you or take over your country or whatever, right? This is a really bad idea.
So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave us a comment, and I'll see you next time.
So this was great coverage. They covered this in about 5 minutes. I know it took 10 or 11 minutes with my commentary, but it was really, really well done, and it helped us get some nuance that we otherwise couldn't have seen. Tell me what you thought in the comments. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. Thank you for the coffees, and thank you more than anything else for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.